Stagecoach expects the government's moves to overhaul the way the rail industry works to mean train companies bear less risk when taking on new contracts. Chief Executive Martin Griffiths said he thought the government's pledged overhaul of the way the country's trains operate would mean revenue risk being shared more equally than it is now. Many train franchise contracts lock in the amount train operating companies such as Stagecoach have to pay the government, regardless of whether the revenue that franchise is generating is as strong as expected. But as part of the Transport Secretary Chris Grayling's pledged overhaul of the rail industry, which included splitting up some of the largest franchises and making train companies and Network Rail work more closely, Mr. Griffiths thought the burden would now shift. While the train operating company will still bear some revenue risk on most new franchises awarded by the Department for Transport, we anticipate that its exposure to revenue risk will be significantly less than on franchises awarded in the last few years, such as the Virgin Trains East Coast franchise, he said. Investors seemed cheered by this statement, with the shares up nearly 5% in early trading to 185p. Mr. Griffiths added he was also encouraged by the government's suggestion that the amount of financial capital that train operators would have to pledge to win contracts would also be moderated and be commensurate with the potential financial return. Mr. Griffiths said he expected to have a new contract on the East Coast franchise it runs with Virgin Trains within the next few months and that this would ensure that any revenue risk that remains with us is acceptable. The profitability of train franchises has been squeezed in recent years and was a reason National Express sold its only remaining rail contract to Italian rival Trenitalia earlier this year. Some commentators also suggest the increasingly unattractive terms to run a rail franchise have led to fewer companies battling for each contract. Mr. Griffiths' comments came as operating profits in Stagecoach's rail division jumped 11.3% to £21.7 million, thanks in part to a strong finish for its Southwest Trains franchise, which has now transferred to First Group. This helped group-wide pre-tax profits jump 8% to £96.7 million for the 6 months to October 28 on the back of revenues of £1.8 billion, down 10%. Stagecoach's U.S. division also performed strongly, with operating profits up more than a fifth to £27.6 million, partly assisted by reduced fuel costs, brought about by its hedging policy. Mr. Griffiths added its Megabus.com intercity coach business in North America had started to perform better after it made amendments to its schedule to better match customer demand. Elsewhere, its London bus business also won more contracts in what Mr. Griffiths called a competitive market. He added that, while operating margins in the division at 5.1% were below his 7% target, he was encouraged by the amount of contracts the company had won.